And look at that. It's all magic these days. It's just fantastic. Hey, Eric.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Got a
Oh,
little bit of feedback there.
I'm sorry about that. I said thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. I'm glad that we could finally connect.
Yeah, it's good times, good times. So as you know, right, this is all about you tonight. Voices that you we need to hear, and hopefully, I'm not giving you too much feedback. So
I've got feedback where I'm hearing everything back again. Give me a second here and see if I got something going.
you might have
Oh, yes.
you got the YouTube channel mute
I had the
on.
YouTube channel on and I'd set the thing and it just pops up and I'm like, why am I hearing myself with a 4-second delay? So,
Yeah,
all right.
that'll
My
mess with you.
apologies. Carry
That's all
on
good.
with your question there.
That's all good. That's all good. No, so I'm glad we got a chance to get together. And as you know, this is all about you tonight. So we're going to explore Eric's world, and I probably want to start off asking you a little bit about your gaming background and your history. You seem to be very focused on Napoleonic. So how did that all come about, and where did you actually start gaming?
So, like a lot of the other guests you've chatted with, as well as with a lot of folks of our generation, I got started probably when I was in junior high when Dungeons and Dragons came out and started playing that. And then you'd go to the local game store and you'd see other stuff and you'd pick up other things that were kind of related to it. So I can remember getting chain mail and trireme and all the rest. And I had a pretty extensive history or interest in history. I was very fortunate when I was about 8 years old. My father took us on a trip to Europe,
Mm,
and we had a chance to go to Rome and Paris and London. And so, I mean, seeing all of these ancient buildings and all of this history and museums and everything else, I fell in love with history and was really, really interested in that. And I can remember visiting Napoleon's tomb when I was 8, and seeing all the stuff there at the military museums. And then my father would have sometimes business trips to the East Coast, so we'd go and see things there. So Dungeons and Dragons kind of gave me exposure to the game store, which then gave me exposure to all kinds of different things, including, a whole array of, at the time, Avalon Hill, SPI, all of those games were popular. And
excellent.
so we had, I played all kinds of genre, ancient stuff, Napoleonic, World War II, World War One, futuristic stuff, role playing as well as historical types of gaming. So kind of a typical smattering of stuff.
Yes.
And then as I got older and had less time to play, a friend of mine, we would get together maybe every couple of months and play something. And we didn't have time to set up World in Flames, which was at the time our favorite game. You need like months and months and months to play that. And you need, at the time, either my mom's house or his mom's house, we would set stuff up for like 9 months a year. It's like Thanksgiving, we got to finish up the game or whatever before it's all got to come down. But what happened was there were a couple of Napoleonic series titles that were short enough and we'd played so much that we didn't have to reread the rules in order to play it. And that was typically the La Bataille series games that had short little scenarios. We could get together, set it down, play a scenario or play a small battle in the space of a day. And so that's what kind of carried me through from maybe mid-20s until about 5 or 6 years ago, when I kind of got back into the hobby and had more time to actually play games.
So you've been playing La Bataille for decades then. You've seen all of the iterations and all the versions and
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think the first game I got was in 1984. It was the Clash of Arms printing of the Battle of Auerstadt. And at the time, I mean, we thought it was fantastic because you had this really interesting map, colorful map, and more importantly, the counters had multiple colors on them. So if you remember back in those days, we had Waterloo, and okay, the French are this sort of faded blue, and the red, the British are this pink color. I mean, it was just like really boring looking stuff.
Yes.
So with the Labatai stuff, you're like, oh, this looks really cool. It's got the colors of the uniform. And we'd been going to game conventions. So here in Southern California, Los Angeles would usually have, and Orange County used to have game conventions. So twice a year, there'd be game conventions. And I can remember going in, and they're always looking for people to try to help out at the Napoleonic miniatures table. So I'd sit there and I'd play, but I'm just like, okay, this is fun, but I don't have the time or the money to paint 5 gazillion soldiers.
Exactly.
And so when you saw Labatai, it's got all these beautiful counters, and we were just saying, well, this is like playing miniatures without the miniatures. We can get all of the forming square and going into line and all the sort of tactical minutia that we like from this sort of battalion level game, without having to invest a gazillion dollars and a gazillion hours into painting stuff. So
yes,
that's kind of how we got involved with my friend and I with the Labatai series.
And then you didn't have to be the person that made sure that the epaulets were correct, right?
No.
Which is a whole. That's a lifestyle unto itself, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I love watching Little Wars TV on YouTube. That's where I kind of get my miniatures fixed, but somebody else has painted all the miniatures for me, and I can just vicariously watch them play.
Watch it and enjoy it. Yeah, that's pretty fantastic. Now, so someone's just Jeffrey has just posted here that you have a Discord channel as well. So tell us a little bit about that as a sidebar. What's that catalyst for the Discord channel?
So here's what happened. Back in 2016, I think my YouTube channel, maybe I started it back in 2014. I'm a fencing coach by profession. So that's my day job, or it's actually my night job. I'll be leaving for that as soon as we're done with our interview. And so I kind of had the YouTube channel. I would post occasionally some different fencing related things there. And I had seen, oh gosh, this was when Stuka Joe still had less than 1,000 subscribers. I saw, YouTube had forwarded me one of his things to look at. I'm like, oh, that looks kind of fun. And so I posted some videos of some Labatai games that I had was doing. And apparently one of those had been seen by, I think, Ed Wimble, who's the head of Clash of Arms and is a big designer in the Labatai. So then he said, hey, there's this ConSim expo coming up, and this would have been in 2016 in Tempe, which is, it's in Phoenix. It's a 7-hour drive from Southern California. He says, hey, we're going to be playtesting some stuff, da-da-da. And I thought, oh, I'll come out. Maybe I will videotape the playtest of a Marshall Enterprise product. At the time, it was Austerlitz that they were going to be doing. And so I drove out there for the day, and I met the guys, and I'm just like, taping it or filming it, and start to chat with them a little bit. And they're very welcoming. And one of the fellows who was playing on the French side had to leave. So they said, well, Eric, would you like to sit in and take over command of Sewell's Corps? I'm like, sure. Because here I'm sitting down, I'm playing with Ed Wimble on one side of me, and on the other side are all the designers from the Marshall Enterprise, who I'd only seen their names and credits in the books. Right. And so here I've got Monty and Dennis and James, and I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. So we had fun. And then they find out that I live in Orange County, and Jim Soto, who's one of the designers, is up in LA, and they were looking for a playtester. So they started to have me help playtest their next publications, on and on and on. So fast forward to the pandemic. There's a concern that there might not be a ConSim well, there's definitely not one in 2020, and there might not be one in 2021, depending on how things go. So Dennis Spores with Marshall says, gosh, is there a way that we could do a virtual convention so we could play and we could kind of promote our upcoming publication? And somebody had posted on Consem something about the campaigns. I think it's the campaigns of the American Civil War or something like that, that they were having a virtual convention. This would have been in January.
Yep.
So I hop in on their Discord and I see, God, they got 70 guys playing games and they've got this thing all organized and it's great. I'm like, can I do the same thing for La Bataille?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. So that's how I then got the Discord server started. And right now, segue, we are organizing our first tournament for the La Bataille series on the Discord server. Wow. And we're going to be featuring the Battle of Ryzen. And the idea is that people can play it face-to-face. They can download and print and play a game from the Marshall Enterprise website. They can access a game from Vassal. One of my other colleagues, Tom Whitfield, out in Dallas, put together a nice Vassal module for that. And so we're going to try to host a tournament and see how that goes. And if it's successful, we'll be doing those on a regular basis, and just try to, build up the community and give people a way to get connected and play virtually. Right. I was only used to playing face to face, and now I'm doing more. I'm playing like a couple of times a week, 3 times a week, I think, on Vassal. I'm having a great time.
Oh, that is great. That's great. And so this gets around your original problem, which was, only being able to play for a certain period of time and playing smaller and shorter scenarios. And is that, we're going to get to your YouTube channel in a sec, but was the fascination with Napoleonics because of the fact that the La Bataille system lent itself to you being able to play with your buddy and get something done in a day, or did you develop the passion for Napoleonics anyway for other reasons?
I would say it's probably a combination of the two. I'd always liked that era, and for a long time I had collected, Napoleonic miniatures. I mean, these are like really beautiful, well-made ones. And so I had a collection of those. So I was interested in that. And my master's degree is in history, and so part of that study is with the Napoleonic era, and so and definitely an interest. And in fact, last year during the pandemic, I normally teach a fencing summer camp. They were asking, can you teach anything else? Because we can't do anything in person. And I'm like, how would you like a camp on the history of the Napoleonic Wars? And so I had a group of, I don't know what, probably a dozen kids. It was all on Zoom. And we basically created games that taught the Napoleonic Wars. So we had a card game dealing with tactics. So you'd have, cavalry beats artillery beats infantry beats, it's like this thing. And then we added more cards for skirmishers and light cavalry and heavy cavalry. And so then they could play multiple cards and they could do them in combinations. And then we did stuff with naval combat, but they all had to be able to do it virtually with each other.
Yes.
So we couldn't do anything without actually sitting down at the same table. And then I think the last thing we did, which they had a lot of fun with, was we had it almost like a game of diplomacy, but with the Napoleonic era. And they were all playing different people. And if they wanted to negotiate, they'd have to type. So in Zoom, you can chat with specific people. So they were like, okay, I'm negotiating with Russia. And they would type something with Russia, and then they'd type something to whoever else they're negotiating with. They had so much fun. They said that was the best one that they'd done. But then at the end, like, okay, here's the reveal. This is what did. And I kind of moved the units on my map to show what people did. And it was a lot of fun. They learned about history and politics and everything else from the era. But there is also like with most wars, a major source of innovation. So a lot of people don't realize that because of all the shortages of horses due to all the wars and everything else going on, that's what got the steam engine going. It's during this time period that the steam engine is developed, and it's a way to deal with all of the horses that are being used for war and everything else. So, and of course, do we have to tell you what happens with the steam engine?
Exactly.
All right, you got me off on a tangent there.
No, that's great. No, that's great. I'm enjoying that. Now, let's cycle back a little bit about your fencing. Now, are you teaching fencing to adults or to children? First of all,
both. So,
let me just ask one more question, and then are you teaching foil, épée, and saber, or just
I teach all three?
All three. Okay. Right.
So I got started fencing when I was in college, about 100 years ago. And a number of years after I'd left, my spouse, she'd also fenced at the same college. The fellow who'd been the coach there had left. He graduated, whatever else. And so the program was faltering. And so she voluntold me to start coaching. And so I had a daytime job, whatever else. I was working as a corporate trainer, so I was used to being up in front of people and teaching. Right. And I had been working with a fencing master up in Los Angeles. So I basically, every week I'd go to the university and I would copy what my fencing master had taught me earlier in the week, kind of a thing. And over the course of time, I got better at it. And gosh, about 20 years ago, we started a team at the college competing in the local Southern California Collegiate League. And I've been involved with the United States Fencing Association. And then about 11 years ago, I started my own fencing studio here in Orange County. And then we opened another location out in Riverside County. And then we expanded. I also teach archery. And my claim to fame is that one of the United States' top archers, Jack Williams, had started both fencing and archery with me 8 years ago.
Well, congratulations.
So there you go.
That's my claim to fame. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Indeed. So I mean, he's worked with a lot of other people since then, but he got started with me. So I must have, done a good job, not turned him off. But yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. And what I find very interesting is that with fencing, it's application of tactics. People are tall, short, fast, slow. It doesn't matter which weapon you're using, whichever style. There's a way that if you do this, you can beat that. You can do this, and so it's all tactics. And in fact, I've even used some of our historical stuff with some of my students, where I'll say, "Okay, you are going to do you know anything about the Duke of Wellington?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Let me tell you about his strategy, because that's what I want you to employ out there." They have a very defensive game, great defensive game. You just go on the defense and they attack you and you hit them with your riposte, parry, riposte, parry, riposte. And after a while, you start to rack up points and you just wait long enough. And if they haven't caught up, you've won by default. So
right. That's very cool. Yeah, that's very cool. So, all right. And so you're very enmeshed in not just the gaming, but the history of the gaming, and then also to a large extent the physicality of the history as well, right? Because you're handling a weapon probably every day, right?
Indeed, yeah. And so I teach foil, épée, and saber, and I'm fairly proficient in all of those. But the one that I competed with the most was foil. And then the one I competed the second most with is saber. There's a number of, you could read different stories about different French officers and people that they would have almost rivalries with various regiments. Yes. And they would settle it. It was almost like boxing would have been in the American Civil War. These guys are fencing instead.
Yes.
And so with fencing, you've got this long history that goes back. And so while things have changed because we're not using real weapons, and the sport itself with the rules and the electronic stuff allows you to do things that you would never ever dream of or want to do in a real duel. You can get it successful in a modern bout, but for the most part, everything we're doing, the foundations are all based on stuff that worked in the past with real duels.
Yes.
And I try to tell people that it's survival of what works. So if you were watching two guys duel and some guy does some damn stupid thing and gets killed, you're like, I'm never going to do that move. But you see somebody else doing something and it works, you're like, I'll try to do that. And that's how over the course of time, fencing has evolved into this really very efficient movement and everything else that we're doing. But it's based on that sort of survival of the fittest or survival of what works kind of a concept.
Yes. That's very fascinating. That's fascinating. Good for you. Well, now, okay. So let's have a little bit of a chat about the channel. So what you talked a little bit about earlier on about just putting some videos up and sort of just went ahead and did it anyway, I guess. Now, are you what's the plan for the channel, and what is the catalyst for you now to keep posting videos? What's the derived pleasure for you?
Well, as you can see, I enjoy hearing my own voice. So that's a big part of it right there. Anybody who knows me is like, oh yeah, Eric's a ham. But with this particular channel, there's lots of channels out there that cover a whole variety of war games. And so one week the guy's got a Civil War game, next week he's got something else and something else and something else.
Yep.
And since I'm still working and I have a business to run, I don't have time to like delve into something new all the time. And so I thought, okay, if I just focus on the Napoleonics, there is more than enough material for me to cover. Not only just from the point of view of games, there's always new games coming out, but with history, there's different things. And so one of the things that I want to try to do is, in addition to, okay, why is this happening or why is that happening in this particular game, then thinking about the game mechanics. So as I'd mentioned before, I'm doing play testing for Marshall Enterprises for their La Bataille series. And so it's kind of got me thinking about, okay, in this particular game, they're using this mechanic for trying to simulate this historical action. And then in this game, they're using a different mechanic, or they've got a different emphasis on one thing or the other. So it's kind of got me thinking a little bit about not only history, but then how do we take history and try to put it into something that's has a simulation quality as well. So.
And do you find with your channel, as you're exploring both the history and the gameplay, does that derive narrative for you, or do you tend to get caught up? Because you probably don't get caught up on the rules because you're so deep in the system that you get it, right? So it's all second.
Oh, no.
No.
So I'll answer your first question first. So with as far as with the channel itself goes, I'd like to be able to explore material in the Napoleonic genre and different games and different game systems and the history of it. And I think that by focusing on this Napoleonics, it's better than just kind of being higgly-piggly with different kinds of stuff. So from a strategic point of view, plus just from a time management point of view, it just makes sense for me to kind of focus on this particular genre. Sure. And one of the things that I want to try to do is to help get other people involved. So I've got a number of like assistant coaches and adults that I teach fencing to, who have an experience playing Euro games and modern board games. And in fact, we used to have at the fencing club before the pandemic, we would have a game night every month. And I would go to them, and I was amazed at all of these new games that I'd never seen before. Seven Wonders and Little Zombies. I mean, all kinds of just Pandemic and Arkham Asylum. I mean, just all these just great games, because I'd been like totally out of I
Yes.
hadn't been following anything since the 90s. And so I'm just, oh, this is fantastic. And then I would say, hey guys, this is what I play. And I would set out a map of Dresden and or Moscow or whatever. And people are looking at it, oh, this is beautiful. And I'm showing the
Mhm.
counters and everything else. So I would start to teach people some games. So we'd do some small ones, and they loved it because it has this narrative to it. It has this tension to it. You know, you've got the die roll and you're doing this and you're doing that. And there is a development of a story with it. So there is drama to it. And plus the whole, can I outsmart? Can I outmaneuver? Can my charge be successful? You know, you've got all of that that's built into it. And so with young people, uh, they've had a ball playing this. And so part of it now, I'm working on a series of videos on kind of how to
Mm.
play the game. And I'm just going to
Yes.
start off with the premier rules, which are, I think, the most accessible, and just kind of have it as a way for people to get introduced to the series and have fun with it.
Right. I'm
And
currently watching your educational series because I've failed miserably a couple of times to get engaged with Labatai. So I'm going to crack the code eventually. So, but
well, and as you mentioned, it's, I think the game series itself is almost 50 years old.
mhm.
And you said, well, Eric, you must know all the rules. No, if you've been watching any of my live stream stuff, you'll see that there's plenty of times that I botch the rules.
Right.
Part of that is because I play at least two different rule sets any given week. So I'm
Right.
play testing the Marshall stuff using Premier rules, and then with my friends that we're doing the Vassal stuff with, I'm playing with Fifth Edition. Plus, I have decades of old concepts of rules
Yes.
that
Yes.
nobody's using anymore that are still up here,
Yes.
and it's almost like a reflex, and you're like, okay, does it do this? Oh, no, 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 that changed 20 years ago, Eric, blah blah blah. But it's still there
Right.
as a reflex.
Right.
um and so yeah, there's times that I botch the rules. And in fact, I had put out a video maybe a month ago on cavalry charges, and then I get all this feedback like, well, Eric, I think you missed out on this rule. I'm like, oh crap.
Oh no. Oh no.
I
Okay.
got to redo it and just cavalry charges revised, and but it's part and parcel when you're dealing with something like this. But it's I've been getting a lot of feedback, particularly on our live streams and everything else, where people have had a chance to see how we're doing things and kind of see how the game flows. Because believe it or not, one of the reasons why I wanted to go out to Tempe 5 years ago was to actually see, am I playing the game the right way? Because my
Right.
friend and I had
Right.
only played it with each other,
Right.
and we had no idea, are we playing it right?
Isn't
So
that
here I have a
fascinating?
chance.
Yeah.
What's
Isn't that
that?
fascinating to see that happen though, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty interesting to sit down with someone else who's playing and then see their style of play and you go, huh. Right? There's a
Well,
little
it's, well, it's not just the style of play. It's like, are
but
we
the
getting the
rules are
mechanics right? Because
right,
the
right.
rules, they can't cover every situation.
Sure.
So there's always going to be a gap here or there. And they're like,
Right,
well, did we interpret it the right way, or did we
right.
understand the right way? But getting to group play, this is the thing that happened when I went out to Tempe, because that was the first time I'd ever played a Labatai where it wasn't just against one other person. There were, I think it was, well, what we did the next year was Battle of Jena, and I think there were four of us on the French side, and there were
Mm,
four on the Prussian side. And when you're maneuvering your core and you got to work with somebody else who's doing stuff, and they've got a totally different idea what's going on, and they've got somebody on their left or right flank, they got to do something totally different. So much fun. I mean,
mm.
I'd never had so much fun like that. And so the big group games are terrific. But for a long time, we could only do it at Tempe. Well, now, since we've gotten everybody kind of up to speed on how to use Vassal, we've got a 6-player Moskva game that we do on Sunday nights. And now I think a 5-player game of Dresden that we're doing on Monday nights. And most of the guys, one of the fellas in Florida, a bunch of the other guys are in Dallas. I'm in California. If we were going to actually get together and do that, we'd have to fly somewhere and all meet.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we can do it anytime we like, and so that's a different experience doing the group game, and circling back to Discord. Discord allows us to do that, to have this sort of larger communication, where because I've created the server, I've got a coalition headquarters and a French headquarters and game room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got these different channels. So when we need to break into different groups, it's not like Zoom where somebody has to send you there. You can say, okay, meet me down in game room 5, boom, and you go there. So if it's just one-on-one, we can do it with Skype or something like that. But with a group like this, Discord is a great tool for that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm just muting myself because my wife has decided she needs to print something urgently. I'm sure it's a fantastic recipe for dinner. I don't know. But,
well, hopefully.
Hopefully it's something beneficial. So for the channel, do you see yourself broadening your topic at all? Will you go beyond Napoleonics, or will you stick with that and then to deepen and enrich the coverage? And maybe even the systems will you cover additional systems as well?
Oh yeah. So I have acquired a couple of different games that I'm already starting to do some videos on. So there was a Kickstarter out for a French company that made one on Marengo. And I got that very interesting mechanics and the counters and everything else. So I'm really excited about that. I just got the reprint of War and Peace with all the new graphics and everything. So I'm going to be doing that. Somebody had suggested I look at the is it Hexsim or Hexasim? Yeah. And so I got a copy of that. So I'm going to be going through and doing things. So it's not just going to be all Labatai, because as I said, I like looking at how different designers have maybe looked at the same battle or have looked at this particular issue, with artillery or command structure, or whatever else, and how they've tried to put it together. But I don't see myself getting too far out of the Napoleonic era. So, I mean, I might go a few decades before or after, but there's just so much material already just in that section of time. Yeah, and there's always new games coming out, so I don't ever worry that I'm going to run out of material to cover.
and are you particularly interested in? Now, I know you mentioned a couple of games that are not tactical, but are you more interested in the tactical versus the operational scale of things? So have you ever played any of Zucker's operational scale games? The 2x, 3x?
I have not. So those are some that I want to explore. I did have a chance to meet Kevin Zucker at the Consim in Tempe a couple of years ago, and actually interviewed him for my channel. So there's an interview there. You can find the interview on my channel. So I'd like to look at that. I've got some games that I've looked at, and I actually did a review on Napoleon. I think is Napoleon Returns 1815, which is, a very high level. You are, 10,000 feet above Belgium, and you've got just core level kinds of stuff. And it was a fun game and a quick playing game, but definitely a different scale than what I'm used to with Labatai, when you're down to a battalion level and batteries and cavalry regiment kind of a thing.
Yeah, very different, right?
Yeah, and the different feel for it and different ways that they're kind of dealing with the mechanics of the game too when you're at that scale. So, but fun to see how people are applying different concepts like card-driven games to Napoleonics. And I've got a copy of Bonaparte at Marengo, which is totally different because there's no dice, there's no charts. It's all total maneuver. And the map itself, there's no hex grid. So it's very interesting how that particular creator came up with that system.
Yes.
But I can see how, other people, and I think that one came out maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's been around for a while, hasn't it? And
Yeah.
it's almost a game of bluff in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, because you've got the you can't see what the other chap has got.
Mhm.
You've got things kind of tilted away, and I guess that's also a factor in Zucker's games as well, where they
Yes,
have
what
the
he's offering.
potential for the units being obscured until they are
Right.
revealed. So that adds another element to it as well. Um,
And what about Pratzen editions, Vive l'Empereur? Have you had any exposure to that? Didier Roux's games?
no, I haven't, and in large part, it's because I've got a bunch of games now that I haven't had a chance to go through yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Now that the pandemic is starting to ease up, business is starting to come back. For a long time, we couldn't really, deal with too many students. And so now there's a lot of pent up demand. So I've been busy with work and I haven't been able to do as much. But I will say this for the whole YouTube experience. I got
Mhm.
started doing this channel for just for fun, and then got involved with the local chamber of commerce. And for fencing, of course, it's a very visual sport. So I would make fencing videos and film stuff and put it up on my fencing channel for my fencing studio. But then I'm talking with folks at the chamber of commerce, and I'm like, I could do a video series for you guys where I interview the different business people in the chamber and we talk about business ideas, marketing,
Hmm.
and everything else. So about 2.5 years ago, I started that project, and that's going gangbusters. Where I don't do the video editing; they now have somebody else who comes and does that, either because they didn't like what I was doing or they realized they could do better. But I will sit down and we'll interview a bunch of people, and then we have a series of twice a month. The Chamber of Commerce posts videos of interviews with different local businesses, and then a bunch of people who saw that said, "Hey, the local history department, or not the history department, but the history society, has this building, this old house from the Victorian era." Which one of the city founders had, but they haven't been able to let any kids come in to tour it because of the pandemic.
Hmm.
Would you like to come out and do a series of videos looking at each room and interviewing a docent?
Oh,
And so
how
now for
cool.
the last 2 months, I've been going out every week and filming a new section looking at the city and everything else and looking at this stuff. And then now that more people have seen that, they're like, hey, that's great. We've got an idea for you could do a video on, orange packing plants and the agricultural workers. And so then there's these other historians, local historians, that are like, this is terrific. Let's build on this. And I'm like, cool, I'm there. So
So you're busy.
so if I haven't gotten to Pratzen's games, it's because I'm got a few other irons in the fire,
Wow.
kind of a thing. So
Wow.
no offense to Pratzen game. I'm sure
Yeah,
it's
sure, sure.
beautiful, but
Yeah.
I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah. So you really are running three different types of video experience then, right? So you've got your gaming and the fencing, and then what you're doing for what I would call local history, right?
Right.
So that's excellent. That's awesome. Well, I tell you what. So I know that you said that you have you're off to do lessons and things, and you're coming up on the 40-minute mark. But were there things that you wanted to share with the gang? Because I think you've got a very focused channel, which is wonderful, and you've got a great style about you. I've enjoyed some of the videos, all the videos that I've watched. I haven't watched all of them, but I've seen some of them. And so if do you have things you want to share to encourage folks to try and click the subscribe button?
Yes, you'll be entered in to a lottery to win $1 million,
There we
just like
go.
just like getting your vaccination in the state of Ohio. Yeah, it's $1 million lottery. So just hit those subscribe buttons, everybody.
And you get
And then the more people you tell, the more opportunities you have to win. No, so yeah, a couple of things. First, getting to the Discord channel for Labatai. We're trying to work on developing the community and giving people a chance to connect. And we've got people I think right now we've got over 70 people who've connected worldwide, and a number of them are in Europe and a great many here in North America. So we're working on building that up. So we'll be having more material on that. And if people want to get into the Labatai series, I'll have some of those sort of everything you want to know about Labatai, but we're afraid to ask, or
Wonderful.
the young person's guide to the orchestra, except it's for Labatai, something like that. So to kind of get people into the game system, and then if you like Napoleonic history and gaming, and maybe you suffer from insomnia, and you would find my voice soothing to put you to sleep, then definitely subscribe to my channel.
Fantastic. What a great outro. That's awesome. Well, listen, man, that was fabulous. Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your series on the education for Labatai, because I do really want to understand it and enjoy it more. So I'm excited about that. And I think we're gonna have to come and try and check out one of these Sunday night or Monday night sessions and listen to the experts play and argue about the rules and things like that.
Well, it's not quite as bad as how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, but sometimes it can go there. But what's nice is that we're all friends. We all have known each other through the different game conventions that we've attended, and so we have a good time, kind of joshing with each other. There was another channel I used to watch quite a bit called Thursday Night Gamers. And they're all they do is, I think, the Zucker Napoleonic series, but they haven't had anything out in a while. But I liked it because you could kind of get a sense of, here's a bunch of guys and here they're playing, and so with the live stream, it's kind of like you're sitting in at the table, and you have a chance to see what we're doing and listen to our silly banter. But what's been interesting is some of the people who had been watching it and who had been part of the Discord have now joined in our games.
Fantastic.
And yeah, this one fella, David from Florida, he contacted me after watching the live stream, and he says, I'm out in Florida, I don't have anyone around, do you need somebody? I'm like, yeah, we could use you. The Allies in Dresden need another player here, and and so now he's involved. And so it's just a great way for people to get into community. And particularly with this tournament that we're going to do, it's a way for getting people to connect. And I would love to, play a game with Stigler via Vassal. I know he's a huge Vassal fan, and we could play a game, and we could post something on his channel about it. Any number of things. There's all kinds of different ways to kind of get people connected. But I think Vassal is a great way to doing it, and so I just want to kind of build up the activity and get people involved, but also get more young people involved.
Yes.
And so I think Vassal is going to help with that, because a lot of times you don't have a table that you can set it at and leave it there. The cat's not going to eat the counters or whatever else. So Vassal fixes that. You can play remotely, you can play with your friend, and young people are used to playing on the computer. So this is a piece of cake. So let's get this out there, and let's get it out so that I'd like to see, the series itself is 50 years old. I'd like to see it, turn 100. Wouldn't that be nice? I don't know if I'll be around when it turns 100, but maybe close.
Yeah, there you go. Well, so that'd be very cool, though. And I think if folks can take the system on in small bites, and particularly in a community that's helping them and engaging with them and allowing them to learn the game, even if it's in a tournament style environment, still learning the system that way is often a lot of fun. I've learned several games because I've just either been dumped into a tournament because I turned up at a con, or it was just, oh, come on, just get in there and let's have some fun, right? So that's a great way. I'm glad that you're doing that and advocating for the hobby in that way. It's fantastic.
Well, and the other thing that's really cool is the guys from Marshall Enterprises are funding the prizes for this tournament.
Hmm.
So, first place is going to get a copy of their upcoming publication, which usually retails for about $180. Their upcoming Labatai. And
Nice.
then second place winner, we've got a book, I think, The History of the Napoleonic Wars, that just came out a year ago. I can't remember the name of the author, but it's a good book. And so, there's a couple of prizes out there. Plus, maybe you can earn a marshal's baton, right? Doesn't everyone have one of those in their knapsack?
Oh, of
So,
course. Yeah, fantastic. Well, maybe they can win a free fencing lesson with you or something.
well, so here's what's funny.
Hmm.
A couple of years ago, I took the kids and we went to Pennsylvania for summer vacation. And we're touring around Philadelphia and Gettysburg and everything else, and go to Valley Forge. Now, Ed Wimble is a docent at Valley Forge.
Hmm.
So we arranged to meet him, and he gave a fantastic tour. Learned so much about it. And in fact, when I asked the kids when we got back, I'm like, hey, what was your favorite part of the trip? My son was like, I love the tour of Valley Forge. Getting all the little details and everything. It was terrific. So I, I didn't pay Ed anything, but what we did was we exchanged. So after the tour, he takes me over. He does martial arts, and he takes me over to the dojo where his karate master is, and I give him and his karate master a fencing lesson.
Ah,
So we it was great. It was a lot of fun. But if anybody ever gets to Valley Forge, you definitely want to try to get a tour if you can with Ed Wimble, because he does
right,
an
right. So he
amazing
does
job.
a
Yeah,
fantastic job. And how
yeah.
old is it now?
I don't know. That is a state secret. But I know he's slightly older than me, by at least a few years, a few years.
You nearly said a decade,
But yeah,
but
but he's a great guy. He's a character. I mean, what's nice now that I've had a chance to meet, all of these guys that have been involved with the development of not only just, I mean, in Ed's case, he's developed a number of different Napoleonic games, um, but just the amount of knowledge they have on the subject.
mhm,
And I mean, Ed is just a fountain of knowledge
I can
about the
imagine.
whole era. So, it's really amazing just to learn from them. And plus, we have a lot of fun playing the game. So it's kind of good to know. And for me, it was a chance to kind of like, here I'm meeting people that had developed this game. I don't want to say they're heroes, but they were like, these are the guys that have developed this game that I've loved for decades.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I feel very fortunate, and circumstances just worked out the way they did. So the YouTube channel brought me to Tempe. The Tempe brought me into contact with all these people, and then now I'm it's, what would they say? It's spun off into other things. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing your time with me tonight.
Well, Kevin, it was a pleasure, and I hope everybody out there enjoys our little interview here. And if you have a chance, if you haven't done so already, feed the algorithm, hit the like button on Kevin's video, because that's always helpful. And then, of course, if you're interested in following my adventures in YouTube land, sign up over on Eric's Table Napoleonic Battles. And if you're interested in trying Labatai, come and join our Discord server, and I'll try to put a link in this video.
Yeah.
The invitation is only good for about 7 days, so if you haven't subscribed or joined Discord, then no worries. You can just queue it up again, and we'll try to send you another invite. But come and, as I say in the fencing world, I say, take a shot at archery, take a stab at fencing. I got to come up with something. Take a roll at Labatai. No, I gotta do something. I gotta come up with some kind of little catchphrase there.
Maybe take a charge at it.
There you go. Oh, take a charge at Labatai. I like that. I
There you
like
go.
that. You'll have a blast.
Yes,
There you
yes.
go.
Send a volley. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Excellent.
Well,
Well,
now we
thank
probably
you.
lost all the subscribers with all of
I
our
know. I think
puns.
you'll be
That
fine.
usually will do it in. So that's about it.
That's great. Wonderful.